5, 6, 7, 8. Hey everyone, welcome. This is the Smart in Public podcast. It's a podcast where PR people and, like marketers, founders, CEOs, we all talk about business life and our experiences, through the lens of whatever we're working in. Every time the intro changes, I can't help it. I write it down and it changes every time. Today, you guys, we're so excited, me in particular, because I met Cristin Culver when I went to a mixing board event. I'd always followed her content on LinkedIn. She's super smart, sharp tongue. Who wouldn't love that? But, when I got to know her, she kind of took me under her wing a little bit at the event because I'm a little bit of a scared person when I go to those all by myself. Like, bless you, Cristin and Ali, for doing that. And through that, have been kind of following what you do more closely and just couldn't be more proud to have you on the show and kind of sharing what you do with the audience today. So thank you. Welcome.
Wow, what an intro. Thank you.
I'm going to intro you more. So just hunker down. So for those that don't know Cristin, she runs Common Thread Comms. It's a PR and communications consultancy where she assists some of the best brands in property tech, legal tech, and fintech. We're going to talk about why she does that to herself a little bit later. For the last 20 years, Kristin's teed up some big brands to even bigger audiences. So prior to her consultancy, she was the head of communications at Divvy Homes, Notarize, and Open Door. So pretty huge. We're so happy to have you here, Cristin. Welcome.
Thank you. Love being here. Like, this is also nostalgic for me, like being in a room where like everyone's named Katie, like really brings me back to like the 90s, like elementary school. So I love it.
Yes.
Exactly.
We are of a certain age, Cristin, when Katie's were around. That's right. I know. I don't see many now. You don't see them in the like daycare. I don't see many Katies anymore.
Yeah, it's like when dinosaurs and Katies ruled the earth at the same time.
Yeah, next to the Jennifers and the Ashleys.
Yes, exactly. So, Cristin, why don't you start by kind of telling us through your own words, like I did the formal intro, but
yeah,
how did you get into what you're doing?
Yeah, you did the LinkedIn scrape. Thank you.
Yes.
Let's say, like, I have a pretty, like, quote unquote traditional PR career. Started in the agency world, worked at a couple of those, which I always say, like, gave me like that ruthless work ethic that you get, allowed me to work across all these industries, like, helped me figure out what the heck was interesting to me. And then I went in-house pretty early on. Had the real privilege of getting to work at transformative internet companies in the moments where they were like really making a run for it. So like I've spent time at Pandora Radio, Trulia. It's a company that was pre-IPO and then eventually sold to Zillow in the real estate space. And then others, like you mentioned, Open Door, Notarize, Divvy Homes. And then now I've been consulting for about 2 years with some really incredible clients who kind of wanted to get serious about building awareness and trust and finding their founder voice. So I've been living that consulting life for a while and like really, really loving it right now.
At what point in your consulting life were you like, I can do this? Like, what was the timeline for you?
I've had like very high peaks and low valleys. Like for the beginning 6 months, I was like, oh my God, killing it. And then I wasn't focused on like pipeline building or anything like that. And then like I had a moment where I was like, wow, I'm an imposter. And then like in the same 24 hours, I was like, the pipeline was back full.
Yeah.
So I go through like some journeys and they're usually like quick eras and then I'm off. But I'm feeling pretty confident on it right now. And like I'm in a lane, I have a niche a bit,
Yeah.
but I'm starting to branch out. But like you're talking to me today and I'm feeling like, okay, I've got my feet underneath me pretty squarely, but like ask me again in 6 months. I think that's the life. Like it's never, it's not a steady road and that's fine with me. Like I've got the stomach for it.
Yeah, totally. That's such a good point. Okay, well, let's talk about kind of what you're focusing on right now then. So as I mentioned, property tech, legal tech, fintech, like they're super regulated, right? Like why do you do this to yourself? Like, is there a common thread between the three of them? Like, why are you leaning into this area?
It's so funny that you frame it like this. Like there's absolutely a common thread that links like the bulk of my work together, which has been these companies have wanted to take like very legacy offline businesses and processes and bring them online. And in the current era we're living in, it's kind of like funny or like pedestrian to talk about businesses coming online and digitizing for the first time because like everything now is like getting an agentic AI layer on top of it. Like that's the business. But for decades, I mean, the real ones will remember like incredible businesses were being built by bringing very offline experiences online. And the main link for all of these companies is like you have to build trust or nobody's going to want to work with you. So, and I always joke like that a big like through line for my work is end up working at these companies that like sound like a scam or they sound like too good to be true.
Yeah.
Because I think everything magical starts out that way. So if you're going to be shopping for a house or trying to sell a house online or do your trust and will online or get something notarized online, like there's got to be a hell of a lot of trust built between the company and the customer. And that's often built by like really strong narrative and showing and telling in tandem. And that's been a huge theme of my career and my work in the industries. And yeah, it's been hard, but it's been fun. Like I'm not scared of those types of things. So I say bring it on.
Yeah. And kind of thinking about that narrative too, and how you get that story out. This is a bit of a broad question, maybe a bit of a loaded one, but there's go direct, there's media first, there's paid, earned, and owned strategies. Like, which approach do you lean towards when kind of working across all three of these areas?
I'm going to take your broad question and give you like the very vague, like it depends answer.
Perfect.
But I will also say with like full conviction that every comms strategy like needs to be hybrid at this point. Like if you're not doing some level or some combination of like hybrid of owned, earned, and paid, like
Yeah.
not that you're doing it wrong, but I would just say like there is no one lane that I think totally works, or at least at the moment. Like I find myself most often working like with companies that need to acquire customers. So it's a mix of
Yep.
earned, owned, paid, also very, very heavy on social. Just because it's like, it's almost like a backwards way to think about it, or like it's strange that people do this, but for very high consideration products and services, like we're living in a world where people go to social profiles to like check the vibe and see if
Yeah.
something's legit. So that's a bigger part of like the work that I'm doing. But like
Yeah.
I can be doing like very vibey consumer work, and at the same time, like with the very same business, it can be like very buttoned up, like B2B trade press type initiatives that are meant to appeal to like a partner audience or like a totally different audience. So I'm doing this hybrid work, like often like two lanes in tandem. And I used to like have these playbooks that I was so proud that I had like created, and like, they were things I referred often. Now it's like they're all collecting dust. I haven't looked at them forever because I never dare to say things cannot be playbooked, but all the rules have changed. You guys know this. Like everything's different, but I am super bullish on like how many channels can be effective for audience engagement. And then right now, like I am super bullish on go direct. I'm just like, I'm focusing a lot of my current work on helping founders like tell their story that way, and just alongside everything else that matters. I think like, I don't think it's a like era we're in. I think it's like a real true shift.
And I find the go direct strategy, particularly when you're working as the only comms person within a team, when you're in a consultancy, but like working directly with that founder to empower them to know how to better understand and position to that audience of media is so powerful. And I think a lot of people think it takes away the power of the PR person because they're not that middleman, but really it just makes you look even better. It builds a relationship that's more collaborative and trusting with the founder as well.
100%. Yeah, you should see my like Twitter DMs of like all the founders I'm working with, like sending tweets and like just like really having these like ongoing, never ending conversations about conversations that are happening like kind of like culturally, and like where the brand fits in, what they could say, what they could add, like where they should like stay on the sidelines. So yeah, it's created a lot of intimacy with the founders I work with, and like I think that's a secret to success.
100%. You learn their voice. Also, you have to, when you go to work with a company and you want to take that strategy, I feel like you need to be able to suss out, like, is this founder going to engage with me at the level that we need to make Go Direct work? Because it's not just you feeding them things and say, do this, do this. They have to meet you halfway, come to the table to do it well.
100%. Like, and I won't personally work with a founder who like we can't vibe in that way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there's a lot of teaching that can be done, but I think a lot of it is really inherent. And like the ones you see doing it really well, it's like you know that that's like just foundational to who they are. And then the ones that are a little like cringy as they attempt it, like you can tell they'll get there. I hope they get there. I root for them, but it may not be as inherent.
I think what's interesting as well is like what I'm noticing is when there's a really nuanced message that needs to get out to the market and when it needs to come from a CEO or a founder, the Go Direct piece feels more authentic to people, I think, when it's them posting, it's them talking about why they made a decision. I saw one recently about some of the layoffs, and I won't say which company, but it was just a really well-written, nuanced message. And I think when you're trying to use media to do that, it can be quite tricky. Whereas if you can get that right and get that nuance right, then the rest of the coverage should follow and hopefully we'll capture some of that nuance. But it just feels like that's the way forward now, I think, even for complex storytelling.
Yeah, and actually it makes me wonder why did it take us so long? You know,
Totally.
like
Well, thinking about kind of audience and how you're working across different audiences with kind of the industries that you focus on, I know that as a part of your work, you pitch a lot of local outlets. So you know where I'm going with this. So
yes.
the role that you had at Open Door was literally something like head of local communications. So like you have been a part of this local PR kind of, you've been in the trenches for quite a while now. So like, what do you think why do you think local storytelling has such a benefit to clients? Like, what is the magic in that?
I am like the number one fangirl of local PR. I've been talking about this on social for years. Yes, like I did work in this daily for like 3 years. And I think it comes back to kind of like the through line of my career and like what like the companies I worked at needed to achieve, which is they needed to build trust and like convince people that something was not a scam. So like local media is such a key channel for that. Like there's nothing more effective than showing a potential customer like that their neighbor tried something and had a positive
Yeah.
experience or something is
Yeah.
positively affecting their community and is now available to them. And at Open Door, our prioritization on comms literally went internal, local, partner, and then like corporate was like a way distant, not last place, but like it was down the totem pole. Because it was all about storytelling in the communities we were operating in order to build trust with customers. It was like, because they were hearing on the radio and they were getting direct mail. There was like all these marketing channels in play at the same time, but like they were getting these direct mailers and looking at it. Like I've talked to so many customers where like the husband would be like, this seems interesting. And the wife would be like, throw that away. That seems like a scam. But if you can then like layer in local storytelling that like tells the story of how this thing works positively, like you can convince people, you can at least reduce that delta between like them thinking it's a scam and then thinking like, oh, maybe I will try this. And also like I kind of think it's like quite literally the like closest form of media to their hearts and minds, which makes it effective. Like it is physically the closest to them. And I also think like as you look at the media landscape, there there's a lot of erosion in trust in national media, but I don't think it's happened as much on the local level. I still think there's like a fair amount of like trust that still exists locally.
Yeah. Well, and especially because they see those faces every day, and it's
Totally.
different. And then you see them at the grocery store. Like it
Yeah.
just has that weird kind of different vibe to it. It makes me think of this saying that comedians say, that like local jokes get local work. And I feel like it's the same kind of concept.
For sure. I mean, these local media, like they understand like by neighborhood, by street, like they are the experts. So if you can kind of like get in and crack that, like it is, I have seen like insane like business ROI from it.
Yep. How do you think about researching and like putting together plans for local storytelling?
Oof.
Just bundle that up into a quick
I
talking
know.
point
And
for
like
me.
there's been so many commonalities that y'all have explored in the past episodes about hiring local agencies and doing regional
Mm,
specific comms. And it like this also, a lot of the same themes and rules apply to US local comms. Like you
mm,
really need to look at local comms as like each state and honestly like each media market is its own region. Like I'm in Texas, but like what works in Austin does not work in Houston and may not work in Dallas. There's a massive amount of like local nuance and knowledge you have to have in order to be effective in those markets. So um, I say that to like just set people's expectation that like you got to know
mm.
your market. You you got to understand like what you're working with. Like I I couldn't like pitch Australia with the same like plans that I have for the US. Like so it's the same thing
Yeah.
for local by market by state. That being said, like you can put together like plans, but I think it's harder than national media because you have to really know your stuff about the local market. You cannot give off the like she doesn't even go here vibe like from Mean Girls. Like you cannot like when you're pitching because again they live there, they know it. Like these reporters are going to be like next, no.
Mm-hmm. Davisi, what's local kind of storytelling look like in Australia at the moment? Is it tough?
I think so. I think there's probably a couple of things. Probably volume wise, we're a lot less in terms of like the number of outlets from at a local level, but we absolutely do have like community level papers. Usually they're sort of to a certain area, not necessarily to a city. So I think it's probably similar to anything that we've talked about before is like if you don't have real impact or examples that how your news is impacting that community specifically,
Mm.
then it won't work. And that might look like jobs for the local I mean particularly in Australia, it's around employment probably because a lot of
Yeah.
these local papers and regional papers are in areas where unemployment is fairly high. So usually if you have a story that's going to bring jobs or employment, then that's going to be really strong. I think if you have something where you're bringing investment to that community, so if you're building a factory, if you're opening something, anything like that, definitely gets a run. I think what Cristin was saying, I actually think some of the businesses here are missing a trick in terms of reaching that everyday person in terms of their services. So like if you're a bank or if you're in one of these kind of more online digital spaces and you have an offering, I don't think they're doing a lot of local storytelling. I could be wrong, but I think who does a lot of really strong local storytelling here are people like Telstra. I mean, they obviously have the largest regional telco network in
Yeah.
Australia, but they do a lot of work in the regional areas. That's probably a good example of someone who's a brand that's really understood that there is value in telling those stories in the
Yeah.
regions. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say at a volume level, it's lower in Australia. We don't have the number of outlets and the number of journalists that you could probably, but there are definitely targets and regional papers for sure.
And everything you said mirrors what you see in the US, like by market. There um there's usually one major paper, a business journal, maybe some independents, for like major news or excuse me broadcast stations like CBS, Fox, NBC, and
Mm.
ABC, and then newsletters. Like, and big shout out to Axios, who I believe is like kind of leading the renaissance of local news through all their
Yeah.
local newsletters. But
Mm.
that's like the landscape you're going to see in most markets. And the point I really want to make is like none of those media outlets locally care that you exist. They want to care like what is the impact that you're making. And I think
Mm.
that's like there's such a misconception about local news. Like the biggest one is like local is easy and national is hard. Like to be very clear, like they're both hard, and I would say local is harder because you have to have that local tie-in. You have to like be able to
Mm.
say, you have to be able to like talk about the impact. It's usually economic impact, like you'd said, deficit.
Mm.
And what's funny is like on the business desks of most of these newspapers, the beat of the business reporter is usually economic development. So like that's
Mm.
what they're
Yeah.
gonna want to see. I think you have these national brands who are getting like a lot of press on the national level, and then they want to do something locally and like no one cares and they're
Yeah.
totally gobsmacked and they're like, why is this so hard? Because again, Uh, no one cares that you exist. I think the only ones who live kind of like in rarefied air on that front are like the Uber, Waymo, DoorDash,
Mhm.
Instacarts of the world, where like it is news if this big company with millions of customers, like if they launch or if they bring something new to a market, that is newsworthy. But like you're not going to see that on the like smaller scale startup level if we're talking about like through the lens of like tech comms,
Yeah.
um, and even consumer products. Like they're hard. Like you can't just try and shill your stuff to a local market or like a local audience. There's got to be a real tie-in.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe I'll give you an example of one I just did.
Yeah.
I work like pretty squarely in real estate, although I am like definitely branching out. I have a client who's in real estate, really brilliant startup, and they've been wanting to build awareness in the Atlanta metro. And the market dynamics there like make a lot of sense, but the fact that they do business there is not news. Um,
Mm.
and like that again, it's like it can be confusing for others to like realize that. But for this company, I thought I was gonna have to come on this pod and like tell you about how I failed because there is a 90% failure rate, and I've been working on trying to land a local story in Atlanta for this client for like months. And honestly, what happened is I pitched a story. Like I really understood the Atlanta market, and I pitched a story and I heard nothing.
Mm.
Um, and then I like gently followed up, and like the pitch was really good, like really, really good. And I don't mean to toot my own horn, but like I spent hours of research, like really figuring out what was the angle here. And 2 months later, I get a reply from the reporter on my pitch and was like, I want to do the story this week. So like off we went. And then the story went live. It was like insane customer acquisition channel, like from the second it went live, and like more than
Mm.
national, like way,
Yeah.
way, way more than national, because it is a story about how local people were able to buy homes that they wouldn't have
Mhm.
been able to buy. So like that is a like 80% of people are sitting in local markets right now, like wondering how they're going to buy a house. So like
Yeah.
it really hit in on so many things related to like what people are feeling locally. Um, and it was a story of like real people making kind of like their dreams come true, which is a huge component of local, which is like pulling in local customers to tell their local story. Um, and what's been great for the company is like now when they do all their other marketing motions, like the direct mail or whatever they want to do,
Mhm.
like if people hear about it, like even if they're getting like word of mouth of people being like, I did this, when people Google the company name now, like they're gonna like the first thing that
Yeah.
shows up is like a glowing local news feature that's going to bridge that trust gap, and they're going to get customers on like from that probably for like years. So
Yeah.
And that
very
level of
hard.
engagement, yeah,
Yeah.
nailed it.
Mm.
I feel like that is the expectation that so many founders have that are not even thinking about local news as like that opportunity to be number one in Google search when their announcement or their product or whatever they're doing gets announced on that day. People instantly think like, I want to be on TechCrunch, you know?
Yeah.
And
But like
that's not what's going to drive it
no,
sometimes.
like who reads TechCrunch to like make a decision about like how they're gonna like feed their family or buy a house or you know
Mm.
some of these really
Yeah.
foundational things, and that's where local news like really can like be so effective is like the
Mhm.
actions that people take that are like daily or very like kind of like close to home is the only way I can explain it. Like
Yeah.
they're not turning to national news to like learn about these things. Maybe. I mean, I've had some things where like a New York Times article was like great for Google results, but it didn't drive customers. But then like getting the
Mm.
same version of that story on the local level was like 20x the ROI in terms of like customer acquisition. So
Yeah.
yeah, there is like they are for different purposes.
It almost feels like when you do local news and you get a big hit like that, it's almost kind of like selling the American dream again. Like
Hmm.
it's showing, especially if it's for a client where it's, you know, they're entrepreneurs or anything like that, it just gives it that feel. Like it gives you that warm and fuzzy as somebody reading the local news or consuming the local news that you just don't get from like a Fortune article, right? No, not.
Totally. Yeah. And this is a total aside, but I feel like local news is also like way more shared. Maybe
Hmm.
like when I fire up my Facebook like news feed every now and then, like I do have a lot I have a
Once a
lot of
month.
I have a lot of boomers up in there, but I there's a lot of like the local stuff to me
Yeah.
feels more shareable because I think also people feel connected to it, so they have like opinions on it. So they'll say,
Hmm.
you know, so I do find it to be like quite good for being content that people like share with each other and comment on. And I think it gives it a longer tail.
Well, and even to like the Facebook groups that, everyone's
The
moms and
community
dads are
groups.
in, their community
Yeah.
groups, like those
Yeah,
that type of stuff gets shared in there and reaches in a completely different market than
totally. And don't forget Reddit. Like,
oh,
there's those
totally.
very hyper local things where the people on Reddit love to dissect things.
Yeah.
Um,
I
yeah,
love Red.
so me too. And like, I'm telling you,
Yeah.
local content like kills on Reddit
Yeah.
because people like they want to dissect it. They want to talk about whether they agree or disagree or whether they think it's a scam. So,
Hmm.
um,
So we're talking about results a lot. Can you just like bear with me and let's get
yeah.
super tactical on this? So can you help break down like how local comms works? Like where are the opportunities? What does that look like for comms people?
For sure. Okay. I want to reiterate my earlier point that like no two local media markets are alike, but there are general themes. Like I talked about, there's like
Mhm.
a major newspaper, business journal, four major TV stations, and then there's other outlets. Um, and then the newspapers, they have these business reporters, the economic development reporters, but um, they are focused, I think, on like truly local businesses or major national stories that have local implications. I think in general, people need to remember that the mandate of local news is take what's happening nationally and localize it. So that's an opportunity if you can spot it. Like,
Mhm.
um, and they're going to be focused on economic development, whether things are good or bad for the market, for the community, and you'll have to really dig in. Um, to specific media markets to figure out if there are beat reporters. Like some markets will have like technology reporters, or they're not going to have an AI reporter. Sorry, guys. Like they're going to have like very broad things. Like they'll have real estate,
Mhm.
and it may be segmented by commercial and residential depending how big the markets are. But like they may have entertainment or like you know, hospitality or something, but it really depends on the market. In a city like Nashville, which has like healthcare, they're probably going to have a few more people on that beat. Um, and again, there's a small roster of reporters, and you're going
Mhm.
to have a really good localized pitch. And
Mhm.
again, the fact that you're this buzzy national brand that now does business there in some way is not news. Like that, I think
Mhm.
again, like you have to figure out like what is the impact. And I want to also talk about local TV because I think it's super highly effective, but want to talk about elusive. Let's break down kind of like, let's say like an hour newscast, let's think about it as like two 30-minute blocks. In
Okay.
30 minutes, 21, you have probably 21 minutes after commercials, and then about 17 of those 21 minutes is like murders, car chases, politics, sports, weather, like breaking news. And then
Mhm.
they're going to balance that out with like a little good news. It can't be all murders. Um,
Mm.
and you're going to have like 5 minutes for good news. Like, I hate the world we live in, but like, yeah, you get 5 minutes for good news. And we know like each segment is usually like 2.5 minutes. So over an hour, you have 10 minutes
Mhm.
of that they devote to like non-breaking news, and that's where your opportunity lies.
Yeah.
So I would say keep your expectations low on broadcast, but like go for it because that is the magic. Like I have watched like metrics on the back end of local comms that I've done, and like TV
Mhm.
is like so spiky, so effective. I don't know who watches this much TV, but it's really like a high ROI driver. Um, and then also like what sucks about local TV is like you're gonna have to like figure out who the reporters are to pitch versus like
Yeah.
you don't pitch the anchors, pitching the
That was
assignment
going to be my
desk.
next question.
Yeah.
Like, who do you reach out to?
I mean, it is a needle in a haystack. I hate to say it. Like you're gonna have to like spend some time like digging through like the digital version of the show to figure it out because
Mm.
you don't pitch the anchors. I have never in my many, many years booked a segment by pitching the assignment desk. So
Hmm.
like you're gonna have to go directly to reporters who kind of like veer into the types of stories you're trying to do, which just takes time. So
Would
locals
you
and
say, sorry,
no, it's
let
okay.
me
I'm
just
just gonna say
interrupt.
local's an investment of time for sure.
Would you say that maybe, and maybe this isn't a strategy, but like starting at the more junior people that are hungrier to tell a story
Yes,
potentially?
yes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think that's a great point. Like these reporters who like have to like chase stories and need to go into the assignment meetings with like great ideas. It's very old school.
Mhm.
Like if you watch some of the TV shows about like how newsrooms work, like they do meet in like a production meeting and people are
Mm.
like, I have this idea or like I have this idea or like this is happening. I'm going down to like this opening or this ribbon cutting or this whatever. And then you do have people that are like have to raise their hand with ideas and either gets like greenlit or shot down. But like, yes, that is your opportunity.
That
Um,
sounds really stressful.
it is, yeah, like so
Yeah. I keep
uh,
going back and giggling to myself, thinking about 40 minutes of murder on an hour TV segment. And I'm like, oh God, our Australian listeners, what they must think of America. But like, I think of Australia as like 40 minutes of snakes.
yeah,
And
in
Well, yeah.
Texas.
No, I mean ours is very similar. It's just different. The levels of murder would be lower, but like the the mix of like the time that you have, I call it the puppy story, but like
Yeah,
it's like one or two puppy stories in any news broadcast, and it's like that's your window to get in, and that's it really. And then the
yeah,
rest is yes. So ours is probably a larger sports section as well.
that's funny.
Just
I'm gonna steal that. The puppy stories is really good. Yeah. It's like,
yeah.
yeah, like this puppy got adopted, or the
Yeah, or
feel
like
good,
what
the
it's
feel
the feel
good.
good. It's like leave you at the end. Like look at this. I mean, for us, it's often like a turtle was on the beach at wherever, or the seal at the opera house. Like it's like those
Yeah,
kind of things. But you do often get a really strong like if a company is thoughtful about it, that's where you would get it. But yeah,
yeah.
totally.
similar time frame, just different news coming through
Yeah.
in the other 40 minutes.
For sure. Yeah. If it bleeds, it leads, and then puppies for a couple
Yeah,
minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
exactly.
But I will say, I want to make sure to like highlight one of my favorite tactics, which is paid local news.
Mm.
I don't know how this exists in other forms in different countries, but I'll tell you in across the US, like in domestic media markets, um, the morning shows, very much like national, like think like Good Morning America, in the Today Show, in the local markets, most of them, if not all of them, have some version of that, like Good Day Texas or Good Morning
Mm.
Atlanta. And if you've got a product that you want to pitch to local consumers or storytell around, you should really look at sponsored segments on the morning news. They look, sound, feel like a real segment. Like it might just be the
Mm.
chyron at the bottom, might say like sponsored by, and you pay for them and you have full control over the message. And I've
Cool.
seen like very insane ROI in spending like $2,000 on a sponsored segment and capturing like hundreds or thousands of new customers.
I was just going to ask you how much. That's not very expensive.
No, and I will asterisk it, like caveat a little bit, like it depends on the media market, like what you pay in like a big media market like
Mm.
Dallas or Atlanta or LA is going to be much higher than like a Des
Sure.
Moines or a Salt Lake City or Jacksonville. And then if it's a election year, like the quote unquote like inventory is being sold to all the candidates at like very high things, very high prices. So you're gonna have like less inventory and it's gonna be higher price. But again, like that's only cyclical. But like if you're just trying to do this on like a normal year, like on a Wednesday morning, like I think it's pretty affordable.
Okay, okay. How do startups respond to this kind of strategy when you work with them? And the reason I ask this is I imagine like big national companies paying for real estate to pop up in each area, of the
Hmm.
US. But like if you've got a startup, like is it hard to get them across the line? I feel like they're always kind of gunning for the fortunes and the big articles and the publications of the world. Like What does that
Yeah.
look like?
No, I mean, you're correct. Like, no one in a startup world thinks about local news, like, ever. I think that only really inherently local companies do. And like Open Door was very forward thinking on this. It's because they talk to their customers every day. Like,
Mhm.
so they knew where people were like getting their information and like how they realized there was like a huge trust gap and that local could fill that. Because I think everyone thinks a big like national story will move the needle, but I think it's like the opposite so many times. Like that big New York Times feature story does nothing for customer acquisition, but a local story will drive the ROI. And you have to think about kind of like where you're influenced about what and what category you're in. So like real estate, it's all about location, 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 and it's very hyper local. So people look locally for information about real estate.
That's a good
Um,
point.
yeah, it's a very by category thing. Um, like I don't think you need to be slinging AI products to local, like locally. um,
Mhm.
Maybe if there's some kind of like feel good story about how like a local kid used AI to do XYZ. I mean,
Yeah.
actually, there is always a local angle. Like, so an AI company could find a local customer who like did something incredible with their product.
Yeah.
That could be an in, but like even I think about like Waymo just launched. I live in Austin and Waymo just launched and like I wouldn't find news about Waymo launching in Austin like by reading national news, but it was
Yeah.
all over the local news. It was all over the newsletters I've subscribed to. So like awareness was like super high on that. And
Mhm.
I think like it makes a lot of sense for launches if you are launching into a no market, but
Mhm.
mainly it's going to be like who are our customers? Where are they? What are we kind of quote unquote selling? And like, do they need more education, more convincing? Do we need to build
Yeah.
more trust? Like that's when local really should like come onto the plan if it makes sense.
Yeah. And Waymo's such a good example because, like, are you going to get in that car if you think the technology is going to drive you off a bridge, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
like, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, you need like many local stories of like Joe and John, Joe
Yeah.
Smith, like getting in his first Waymo and going across town and like having the best experience he's ever had in his life.
Oh, Joe.
Yeah,
Just living his own dream.
I think the
totally.
other thing with all of this is like it doesn't have to be either or. Like if you're a startup, you probably do need, if you're looking for funding, certain, tech, national, whatever it might be, to try and get that sort of broader startup message out there in terms of securing funding. But I think it's about, and what I'm hearing you say, Kristen, is like people aren't even necessarily even thinking about it or considering local in how it could work for them. And I think it's that
Mhm.
that layer of going, who are our customers? Where are they? And if they are, and we are trying to acquire customers in these really specific markets, then why aren't we doing local? And I think it's like just it's often an afterthought. And I feel like in Australia it definitely is an afterthought.
Yeah, yeah, and
Um,
it is such an afterthought. There's a company that I will not name and shame them, but they are like one of the most well-known companies with like and they are in every local market. They are B2C, they are B2B, and I did some consulting work for them because they were like, we don't know what to do about local, or like we've never tried it. And this was like kind of like years after they should have probably been doing it, but
Mhm.
I think that just goes to show it's like such an overlooked afterthought
Yeah.
media segment. But the most important thing is like if it matters to your business, like start at some point, or at least
Mhm.
at least consider it. And then
Yeah.
to the point that you guys have made in a previous podcast when you've talked to guests about like hiring agencies and like doing regional, if it really matters to your business, I would consider like hiring somebody locally.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, we did
100%.
that. Yeah, we did that at Open Door. Like I had a woman that I work with named Julie Forsoni, like big props to her. I want to shout her out because she taught me like everything I know. She was a former broadcast reporter who then
Mhm.
like went into comms, and like she just like taught me how to do this. And people like that exist as like as a consultant or like very small agencies in most markets.
Mhm.
And I do think if people like want to nail local, a consultant or like somebody locally is going to give you that unlock that you just couldn't get by sitting at HQ like, tearing your
Oh,
hair out about like why you can't crack it.
yep. Yep. That's such a good point. I feel like that goes for the international like conversation that
Yes,
we continue to
100%.
have as well, where, the US is like, why isn't anyone in Australia caring about my business? And
Yeah.
it,
Yeah,
you
I watched like two
Yeah.
episodes of Bluey. Like I'm trying to like I get it. No. Yes.
Actually, Bluey is a highly accurate representation of Australian life. But I think what it's interesting when I hear you say it's like with anything is you can probably learn enough about a couple of markets. Maybe you can get, but like you can't possibly learn every local market. You can't possibly run every country. Yeah, it's like with anything. I think it's as your business matures, as you really need this as a strategy, it probably makes sense to invest. I think that
Yeah.
applies across,
Mhm.
multiple markets, international, etc.
Yeah. And like when I was at Open Door, I realized that like as we were launching new markets, like I had hit a wall at like 10 markets. There was like no,
Yeah,
I could not do more than 10 US media markets. They
yeah,
were so different.
yeah,
Um, the needs were so different. Like the bandwidth was just constrained, and then we scaled the teams and kind of like I organized them regionally. So I had folks that worked on my local team. Like it was so important to Open Door that we had a 3-person or yeah, 3-person like local comms team because it was like the ROI was so high for local
yeah,
for that business. And
yeah,
they were, is like somebody owned the West, somebody owned Central, and somebody owned East, which was helpful. But again, there was like Atlanta is not the same as Charlotte, is not the same as
yeah.
Philadelphia. So there was a lot of like really digging in and learning. And then for like big, major important markets like Dallas or Phoenix, we pulled in like a local comms on the ground person.
There's just
Yeah.
so much to consume to be able to understand and move with that market that you just can't do, like you said, too many. It's just overwhelming.
For sure. And like you just don't know unless you're there. Like there was an example in a Slack group that I'm in. Somebody asked me, like, I'm trying to pitch Austin this week and I can't, nobody will respond to me. And I'm like, well, no, duh, because it's the legislative session like ends in 2 weeks. So like in everything, 90% of what is happening right now. So like nobody's going to talk to you because they're all focused on the like all the changing policies. So yeah, but
Hmm.
she doesn't know that because she's not here. And I only know that
Totally.
by proximity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's such a good point. Can we talk about just real estate comms really quickly?
Yeah.
I would like to shift.
Hmm.
Allow me. So Devasy and I like vaguely, I feel like we have baby amounts of experience because
Yeah.
our experience was like we're launching a Salesforce tower, and then we had like 1 million people help us. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe not a million, but we had a pretty
I
big
don't
team.
know. I launched an office in Hyderabad in India with like 3 people helping.
Okay, well, you're
But
cooler than
other
I am,
than
so.
other than that, it's very light touch. We haven't done a lot.
But I do
Yeah.
think what we did learn a lot about was like all of the people that need to be involved, like peripheral partners that you don't even think about as a comms person in order to successfully do this real estate thing.
Hmm.
So it was like like thinking about different audiences, the regulations, like what launch timing looks like in accordance to the city that you're doing it in, like
Yeah.
what does a ribbon cutting ceremony freaking look like what about working with the indigenous community? Do you need to like have some type of blessing or I'm just
Oh my
washing
goodness.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I don't want to minimize your guys' trauma about that situation, but like I would also argue that you two were kind of in like a best case scenario with the
Mhm.
Salesforce tower opening.
Yeah.
Like it was like this like tower in the middle of the city that everybody knew about, that everybody was like, it was highly anticipated. I lived in San Francisco during that era. It was like,
Mhm.
when is the tower going to open? Like, can't wait to know more about it.
Mhm.
So yes, you had to coordinate with a million departments, nail the opening, clear messaging about the building, like what it was intended for, what would positively bring to the city, the inhabitants, all of that.
Yeah.
I will say I do a lot less of that, although I do live for a ribbon cutting. Like the real estate comms I end up working on is like to build trust and convince people to deviate from like the status quo of
Mhm.
the legacy real estate process, and try something new. But it's a lot of messaging kind of like against the legacy process that people
Mhm.
arguably hate, and then kind of showing them the promise of something new, which I think you can kind of like that can go across a lot of different versions of like and verticals that people work in is like,
Yeah.
we don't like the old way.
Mm.
Here's all the benefits of trying something new. But real estate is just a lot heavier and more loaded because it is, the biggest purchase that most people make in their life financially. It's like it's
Mm.
never been harder. There's a lot of things, and like every to bring it back to local, like every market is different. Some's a seller's
Mhm.
market, some's a buyer's market. One market's hot, another's cold. So there's a lot of like figuring out kind of like what is the reality of the market and then pitching or like doing the work accordingly.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, real estate is a very much like a not a one size fits all category.
Mhm.
Um, so, but I will say it can go back to like what I've talked about, like finding the local angle. So like for you guys,
Yeah.
it was all about like this tower and what's going to bring to the city. And
Mhm.
that is such an opportunity. I think if you're a national brand and you are opening a warehouse, you are opening an office, you are hiring, you are bringing jobs, like those are local angles that the business reporters at the Business Journal are going to care about. That's
Yeah.
kind of in the real estate realm. So I would argue like probably a lot of folks kind of get to dabble in this category here and there.
Mm.
I see the common thread now that you are outlining it like this for me. I was like,
Yeah.
that first question at the beginning is real dumb, but we're just going to leave it in. So
All good.
thank you for humoring me. Would you, just one more dumb question, like, would you ever consider real estate comms B2B? Like, who
Oh
are the
yeah.
audiences that you're reaching out to?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been in real estate comms in some form or fashion for like 15 years. It's absolutely both B2B and B2C at the same
Mm.
time because like real estate is like it's such an ecosystem and it's so change
Yeah.
averse. Like it moves so slow. So while you're like educating and influencing consumers and trying to get them to do something, um, you're trying to tell other audiences like how they can work with you, how you can partner with them on things. It's a lot of B2B like trade work to reach like real estate agents, other players in the transaction. If you guys have bought houses, there's like 7 companies that are involved, like title and all these things. So like there's got to be a level of cooperation for the greater good of the client. So like
Yeah.
that's the real North Star in real estate. And so it is very much like B2B and B2C at the same time.
Mhm.
And a lot of these like real estate type companies, like they don't grow without like buy-in from the industry.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have done a very large amount of like B2B real estate comms in my life.
I feel like you have done a bunch of different types of comms for everything in your career.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, like am I like a Jane of all trades at this point? I like to think so. Who knows?
What would you say is the most exciting right now in that term in terms of like the evolution of comms then with that lens?
Well, like one thing about me, like I am a huge optimist. I try to be very, very positive, and I think we are in like what I call like the golden era of comms.
Hmm.
I love that AI is helping me go faster. I'm running like really headfirst into like all the new media. I'm not scared to go direct. I'm like actively working with really exceptional founders and their comms people who are excited about like this new definition of modern comms that's like hybrid, that's like, quite a departure from what used to work in the past. Um, and that means to me like a little bit of the past, a lot of unknown, and then like a lot of experimentation. And I just refuse to be one of those people that like sits around being pissed off that like everything
Yes.
has changed. Like I have a very like bring it on attitude. Maybe it was like all the years I did cheerleading, but I'm like,
That's right.
let's go. I think this
Yeah.
is exciting. I don't know.
Hmm.
I one thing about me, I try to be very, very positive about it, but like I think it's never been more fun to work in comms and like get to kind of like navigate this whole new era that we're in, which is like leaving the stuff in the past that like does not work anymore and like figuring out like the what is the future. I think I personally have like a decent sense of it. Like I
Mm.
work with very experimental founders who are like, let's go.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm like a huge, huge optimist, very, very positive about comms being more important than ever, especially like with AI, like all these things are fed by media articles and all
Yes.
these things.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
so, I mean, I think like it seems scary to some people, but I'm like thinking this has never been a better time to be in comms.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
here
and I
for
feel
it.
like if we keep resisting the change, it's just going to put us backwards as
It'll make
comms
us look
people.
like old farts.
I
Like,
think just if people
Actually,
are
yeah.
afraid, I think they should just try some of these tools. Just
for
try,
sure.
just start.
Mhm.
Like just start somewhere. You know, if it's Chat GPT, okay, but there's Writer AI. Like there's a bunch of tools for comms people that you can start to play around with just to remove that fear. Because I'm with you. I'm like, okay, like this is where we are now. So let's
Yeah.
go for it and then
Yeah.
figure out how we add value, you know.
And
I want to
and this
help
is
comms people so badly, but also I want to help my clients. And so when you just hear that tone and that kind of narrative happening across the comms world, I just want to be like, fine, I'll take your client if you're not going to innovate for them. I'll
totally.
take that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
I'll do it.
not to be totally savage like you, but like, it's like it's comms Darwinism. Like if you
Yeah.
can either like evolve where
Mhm.
Yeah.
it's going or be pissed off and fade away.
Yeah.
Love it. Put that on my tombstone. Be like, keep evolving even when I'm dead.
Yeah.
Cristin, we loved having you on. We heard a lot of ways that you are way smarter than me, at least. But
And me.
I would love. I didn't want to bucket us
Sure.
together just in case. But can you tell us, like, how are you dumb in private, Cristin?
Okay, I'm like one of those people that like loves to talk about like all the things that I fall down on. Actually I have two. I was trying to like think about what was like the dumbest. I had two. And it's one is actually similar to Roberto, who was a few episodes back. Like
Love it.
I left for a trip recently, and I left all of my clothes at home.
How do
Um,
people do this? I don't.
Okay,
Right.
hear me out. I was on a road trip. Like it was a road trip. It was a couple hours away. So like I was thinking I had the luxury of like space, in my large SUV where I was like, I don't have to put it in a carry-on.
Yeah.
But like, dear reader, I had it all in a hanging thing in my closet and I just left without any of my clothes. Like I had my little suitcase that I was used to taking, which had like makeup and some pajamas. Anyways, and I drove multiple hours away, got to my destination, opened my car and was like, I don't have any clothes. Um, and I had like 4 minutes to make a decision. I was with my best friend and she was like, let's go get them. So we got back in the car and drove back multiple hours and then went back
Oh,
multiple hours. So
Then
like I
back
haven't,
again. Oh.
yeah, I haven't felt that stupid in a very long time because like I consider like I'm pretty on top. Like I feel like I'm good at logistics and
yeah.
I biff that very hard. And then another one that just like came to mind this weekend is like this is an ongoing struggle for me, and it sounds so stupid to say it out loud, but like because I consider myself to be a pretty smart person, but something that eludes me is like I cannot use like cling wrap or like plastic wrap.
Oh, I love this. This is a great one.
Like I was trying to cover some food this weekend, and I just cannot get it.
Good one.
I cannot get it to stick to a bowl. Like, I have like plastic wrap and I tape it, and I think I've just gone to the point where I'm like, I am just like a tin foil girly from here on
Yes.
out. Yeah. So anyways, I don't know, like those people that can just stretch it and it clings and it sticks and nothing spills. Good on you, but I cannot do that.
Do you know what my tip is? Because I also struggle with cling wrap, and this is not something that I thought about as like I've got a hot tip until you've just mentioned it. Because who
Thanks
freaking
for
Yeah.
cares about this?
Yeah. Give it to me.
So you say you've got a bowl, and then oh god, you're gonna have to watch the YouTube video for anyone that's curious of how to do this. But there's a bowl. I put the cling wrap on the bottom of the bowl. I set the bowl on top of it, and then I wrap it, and then several times around, I mummify it. And my husband's
Yeah.
like, "How am I supposed to get this off?" I'm like, "Knife through the middle." Like,
And here I am, like, have never even considered that, and like I spend a decent amount of time in the kitchen, but
And yet they wonder why the environment is so bad.
it's me. It's my
It's
fault.
poison, cling wrapping like a mummy over her
It's just
food.
1 million turtles coming through into my cling wrap net that I've made to mummify the bowl. Oh my god.
That's a great one. Kristen,
thank you.
You are a very smart person, and I've been blown away by this podcast. But that has made my day. That cling wrap defeats you.
Every time.
I love it.
Oh, well,
I
thank you
mean,
so much for joining
you're
us, Kristen.
welcome.
This has been
Thank
an
you.
absolute treat.
I feel like I talked a lot. I need to cling wrap my mouth after this, but thank you
No,
guys for having me.
you're perfect. We had a blast. And if anyone else has an idea or a topic or a guest that they'd like to recommend, please just email us at hello@smartandpublicpod.com. And then we're on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Smart and Public Pod. And thank you so much again, Kristen. And we will, talk to you next week. Okay,
Bye.
bye.
Bye.